Hello, welcome to my podcast. Now, this is a conversation with lots of people I really admire. It's a chat about success, health, and happiness, and I know you're going to enjoy it. So, without further delay, let's get started now. So, I'm here with Rob Carroll today. And I have some questions for you, Rob, about success, wealth, and health. And I just can't wait to get started with our conversation. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So, Rob, tell the audience about your background, your story. Describe the journey that brought you from your early beginnings to where you are today.
Okay, so slightly abridged version. So I'm a pharmacist by training. Went to what is now King's College. Then I joined, as a lot of pharmacists do, I joined Boots and I worked for them as a store manager. Ended up in head office, hence I ended up in Nottingham. I then did an MBA sponsored by Boots, which was very nice of them, for 3 years part-time. And then I stayed a year and I left and moved into finance. And I worked for a company called 3i, which is the University of Venture Capital, people call it. So you got a very good training. And I worked for 3i in Leicester, in London, and briefly in Frankfurt. Left them, joined a merchant bank, VC arm of a merchant bank for a couple of years, and then decided to do our own thing and set up a venture capital firm in 1999. And we invest 100 grand to 3 million quid in healthcare businesses, and we have a portfolio of about 50 businesses at the moment.
Well done. Well, that's an amazing career, Rob. Really amazing career. So we know a little bit now about sort of your career journey, but how about any hobbies? Because a lot of people know you within the university environment. For those who don't know you, are there any hobbies that you really enjoy or that help you to unwind?
Okay, so I'm asthmatic, so I was diagnosed with asthma at about the age of 16 or 17. So I take a puffer, but I find that if I do some running, that keeps me healthy. So my wife and I run 5.5K twice a week. Go down the gym just to relax and try and keep the lungs sort of healthy. And I'm a keen skier, so go skiing not every year, but most years. And I enjoy watching sport, so try and keep a little bit fit if I can.
Wow. So would you say that's really important to you?
Yes, I think it is. If I don't run, if I get a cold and I don't run for a period of time, then I get wheezy. I start to wheeze, asthmatic wheeze. So I find that if I'm running regularly, then that wheeziness isn't there. And it's quite important to be able to breathe, isn't it? So keeping your lungs healthy is important, and that's so I try and do it through running.
Fantastic. It's great to hear that a person who's been so successful does have a balance in life, and that you do value, going outdoors, taking care of yourself. So it's really great to hear balance, within a successful lifestyle.
Yes, I tend to try to eat healthily and don't always succeed. And a friend of mine said that they only drank at weekends, and I said, okay, that's interesting. When's that then? They said, well, Thursday to Tuesday. So I do drink at Fridays and Saturdays because I think that's part of winding down as well.
Fantastic. So a balanced man. That's great to hear. So tell us a valuable lesson, Rob, that you learned about success at any stage in your career.
I think if you're going to succeed in your chosen field, then I think it's really important to learn from other people. So I've been very fortunate in having some very good mentors in any of the jobs that I've done. And when I've moved on from one job to another, I've sort of kept my previous boss as a mentor. So, when you're young and enthusiastic, you make lots of mistakes. And I remember going to a board meeting once where I'd come out with a statement which didn't go down very well. And I remember the chairman taking me to one side afterwards and saying, Rob, at a board meeting it's probably better to ask a few questions rather than make statements. So I've always remembered that. So I've tried to listen well and ask decent questions, but also if I think somebody, I can learn from somebody, then I've sort of almost adopted them as a mentor. And I've got 6 or 7 people that I speak to fairly regularly, certainly 2 or 3 times a year, if I want to bounce something around that I'm struggling with in terms of a decision. So if you capture the expertise of people that you admire, adopt them as a mentor, then that sort of helps guide you through your own career path. And what I'm trying to do now is act as mentors to anybody who wants mentoring, because I've had the benefit of being mentored by others, and I want to try and do the same for other people.
Very interesting, Rob, because we hear that advice a lot, get a mentor, get a mentor. But do you think people underestimate its importance?
Yes. So we invest in businesses, and if there's a managing director who's young and enthusiastic, which they often are, what we do, what the VC community does in terms of investors, they often add a good non-executive chair who's usually a lot older, usually has got a few scars from the business world. And if the young person can learn from that grey hair or no hair, then you're likely to make better decisions, because trying to guide a young business to success is very difficult, isn't it? And it's about getting the key decisions right. And you can't do that on your own. Even within a young team, that's quite difficult sometimes. So just having a slightly older, more experienced person to dip into their expertise is something that I think a lot of people should do. It's proven to be successful in terms of investing, so why not adopt that in your career as well?
Amazing. And I love that advice about adopting mentors along the way, because we all understand that adoption term, and it just helps you to realize how important it is to hold them close, and to keep them throughout your journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, grab onto anybody you think you can learn from, and just ask them, will you mentor me? And most people are flattered, and they will say yes. And so that's what I've done, and I'd recommend people do that.
Amazing. So that mentor advice is true, and we've heard it straight from a successful person here. So definitely get your mentor if you don't have one yet. So Rob, how do you personally define the following words? So these are words that people are going to hear throughout this podcast quite a bit, and I'm quite keen to know how you personally define these words. So the first word is success. How would you define success?
How do you define success? Well, there's different things to different people, isn't it? But I've got a little bit more time now to because I've only really read for business, and I don't read a lot of fiction. So I'm trying to sort of be a little bit better read, given I'm 62. A bit late, but never too late to start. So I've started reading some ancient philosophy from Greek and Roman times, just the other side of sort of BC and AD. And some of the famous Roman philosophers identified as just happiness. And when you drill below that, the surface on that, and people say, well, having a nice house, and that's fine, that's a measure of success. But why do you do that? Because you want to feel happy about it, or you want a nice car, so why do you do that? Because it makes you feel happy. So I think whatever level of success people get, it's ultimately to make them feel happy in themselves. So I think the purpose of getting a bit deep for a minute, but the purpose of life is happiness, and different people do different things to make themselves happy. So I think ultimate success is being happy.
Wow, amazing.
And that's from 2,000 years ago. That's not from me. That's what ancient Greek and Roman philosophers thought about it. And who am I to say that's wrong? And I think that's right.
It's so profound to hear that from you, though, because a lot of people would call you successful. You know, I've heard people think of you as successful, but because of different reasons, because, you know, a certain career choice or, you know, house, car, these different types of things. But asking you personally, you would define success as happiness.
Yeah, I think the purpose of life is ultimately happiness, isn't it? Because, you know, why do you want to earn money? You want financial security. Why? Because you want your family to be financially secure. You want to give nice things to your partner and your kids. Why do you do all of that? Ultimately, it's to make you feel good about it and to make you happy. So I define sort of success as being happy.
Wow, I really love that. Okay, so how about health? How would you define health?
How would I define health? To be able to do the things that you want to do in life and do the enjoyable things. So for instance, we you know, Nottingham isn't very far from Derbyshire, the Peak District. You know, getting out and having a nice walk is nice. It's good for mental health, so people tell us. So I think health is about, and it's different for different people, isn't it? Some people think it's running a marathon, some people think it's walking, you know, a short distance. So I define it as whatever level of health you need to do what makes you happy. And in my case, it's running to keep my lungs healthy, given I've got a slight weakness there, but also, you know, walking in nice countryside. So I keep myself healthy so I can continue to do those things for as long as I can.
Amazing. And then it might be difficult to define happiness now, because that's a word that comes up in a lot of your descriptions. So what's happiness, Rob?
I think happiness is well, it's what happiness results in doing the things that you find enjoyable, and that can be, you know, as wide as it is long, really. So just being sort of inwardly content, I think, is probably my definition.
Inwardly content. Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, I would agree with that. Because a lot of people, you know, the contentment is what people can't find. It's either it's too hot, it's too cold, you know.
Yeah.
But that contentment, I would say that's happiness.
It's a lot of people who aren't happy or haven't been happy in their career, they are constantly striving for something, aren't they? You can see them. You know, certain world leaders have not had maybe happy childhoods, so they keep on driving themselves. You wonder why they do that, because they're just trying to, I think they're trying to find contentment in something, and some of the most driven souls have had difficult childhoods maybe, but I think when you get to this, you know, when you're the other side of 60, then I think striving for inner contentment is and trying to pass on the expertise that you've learned in your career to other people. I think that helps me be happy.
Interesting. So would you say now that you have some really good friends?
Yes, I've had friends for business associates turned into friends over 30, 40 years. You know, we still go skiing together, we still go on road trips together. So I've managed to what's the right word? Form long-lasting, deep friendships. Not with many people, you know, not with hundreds of people, not with even tens of people, but, you know, probably 15, 20 people that are close. And I think certainly for me personally, much beyond 20, you know, is that a really, really close personal friend? Don't know.
Wow, it's interesting. Do you think that your friendships have definitely made you happier?
Yes, I like interacting with people. I like debating with people, etc. And having a warm connection. You know, when you connect with somebody,
yeah,
that's sort of nice, isn't it? And it makes people happy. So having, you know, a certain number of people that you connect with on a deeper level than normal, I think is very pleasurable.
Fantastic, fantastic. So in terms of people who you admire, name someone who you greatly admire and then tell us why.
Well, obviously teach here, and I used a few examples with students. So one person who I think was voted #1 Briton of all time was Winston Churchill. So why do I admire that particular person? Because in the face of adversity, and Zelensky is a good example now, isn't he? That he's just never giving up. And when he had the chance to flee Kiev, when it was very uncertain whether Russia would go into Ukraine or not, or the capital, then he stood firm, didn't he? And he made it clear via his media skills that he was present in Kiev, and that has resulted in Ukraine resisting Russian aggression. So I think a sort of historic example of that tenacity is Winston Churchill. So in the face of almost overwhelming odds, he didn't give up and didn't flee, didn't go to America for safe haven. And in the end, with a bit of help from other people, namely the United States of America and others, then Britain helped to put Nazi tyranny to bed. So he's probably the person I admire most.
Fantastic. Okay, so I imagine as you've gone through life, your circumstances have changed, your jobs have changed. You've probably maybe relocated at some point. So have your priorities changed over the years as you've built your career? And if so, what were your priorities then compared to now?
My priorities initially were to try and be, I was quite ambitious, so I tried to do a good job in the jobs that I did. And I set a 1, 3 and a 5-year plan. And those plans were things like level of job and financial type targets. And I think the reason I did that is I wanted to feel financially secure. And you come across these very memorable experiences sometimes. And I was deputy manager at a boot store, and there was a manager there who I got quite close to because he mentored me. And I remember one day walking into his office, and he must have been about 55 at the time. And that was in the days of final salary pension scheme. So your pension was based on your final salary and getting to maybe 65. And this guy was in tears, and I said, "Oh, sorry to disturb you." And he said, "No, come in. I want to talk about it." So anyway, I asked him what was up, and he was under a lot of pressure from his area manager. He got a couple of kids in private school. They hadn't got many savings, and he didn't know how he was going to see his kids through in terms of their education if he lost his job. And so at that point, or shortly afterwards, I decided that I would never, I'd wound myself forward to 55, because I was, maybe 25, maybe a bit older. And I just promised myself that I wouldn't be in his position when I was 55. So I decided that at some point in the future, I wouldn't work for anybody else. I would work for myself, because if I failed, at least it was down to me. I wasn't going to be reliant on anybody else deciding that I wasn't good enough at 55, just like they decided this guy wasn't good enough. So I was driven by, is that been driven by fear? I don't know. That's been driven by wanting at some point to have choices, and you can have choices if you have a degree of financial independence. You can choose to do that rather than that, and money isn't driving you in one direction or the other. So I've always remembered that, and so financial security and not being dependent on anybody else has been a driving force, and I can trace it back to that particular sort of memorable occasion, if that's the right word.
Oh, that's amazing. But you know that a lot of people share that desire,
Yeah.
You'll hear people all the time grumbling on the train or the bus, on their way to work. "Oh, I just want to work for myself. I'm tired of, taking orders from people.
Yeah.
But the how to and the drive to do it is maybe what separates a person who actually goes on that road from a person who doesn't. What do you think?
Yes, and they might not get the opportunity, but I've done a little bit of neuro-linguistic programming, which is basically sort of visualizing the future, and then you can instruct your subconscious to go and find your future for you if you talk to yourself, because we have these little people in our heads, don't we, that tell us things, and you can actually treat that person as almost as a different person, and you can instruct that person to go and find things for you. So if you instruct your subconscious to go and find a way forward to solve a problem, then you'll be amazed that you'll be thinking about it when you're asleep. You'll wake up with a solution in terms of sleeping on something, and you will find a way from point A to point B. You just need to know where point B is. And if you know where point B is and you tell yourself you want to get there, then your subconscious will try and help you to do that. So if you decide something and commit to it, I think you've got a pretty good chance of succeeding.
That's amazing. I've read and watched, interviews about similar practices in terms of acting as if, and thinking in terms of your future as opposed to being mentally stuck in your past. Mm-hmm. What were some practical things that you did to be able to kind of walk that out?
Well, it's if you go on a journey, people usually use a map, don't they? Mm-hmm. And you go from A to point B. If you don't know where point B is, you'll end up somewhere else. So if you do have a plan, let's say your plan is going from A to B, you might not get to B, you might end up getting to C or D, but at least it's reasonably near B. But if you know you're going to B, you're not going to end up at Z. So having some broad plan for 1, 3 and 5 years. I mean, a business has a plan. We teach here business plans, don't we? Because if you don't have a business plan, the business isn't going to move from A to B. So I think applying those planning principles to your own personal career, given that people do, MDs do it in business, then I don't think that's a bad idea for your own career.
Great, and that's what you did.
Yeah, just wrote it down, just had 1, 3 and 5 year targets, and set objectives at the start of every year. I agreed with Jo, my wife, and our 2 kids that we would do it as a family as well, which got there was a bit of resistance to that. But anyway, they sort of humour me, and the eyes roll a little bit. But no, I think that has helped sort of us as a family move in the right direction. That might be a bit of an overpowering dad, I don't know, but I do think it's important to have a plan.
Wow, I think that is amazing advice. Amazing advice. Fantastic. So, what do you feel the characteristics are that lead to the development of a successful person? What are the key characteristics of high achievers?
Well, that's a very sort of broad question, isn't it? And I know that you've mentioned either in our chat before this interview about sort of Stephen Covey, etc., and highly successful families. He's written a very good book on successful families. So I think I think it's quite important, and I didn't do this early on, but if you go and work for a decent company, they will analyse you to death. They will interview you. They will do psychometric tests on you. They will do ability tests on you. If they put that all together, that's called an assessment centre. So they put you through the mill, don't they? So if an employer puts you through the mill to see if you can do a job, then why not do that on yourself before you get to the job? So I wasn't happy in my job working for Boots. And I didn't really know where to go next. So I bought a book from W.H. Smith called Manage Your Own Career. And this book was a psychometric test and ability test on the person, the person who bought the book. So I filled all of this lot in, and it came out that I didn't like being in an office. I was reasonably numerate, I could get on with people, I was patriotic, I could add up, and filled it all in. And then out came 2 or 3 choices, one of which was venture capital. And I thought, what the heck's venture capital? And then I investigated it a bit, and I thought, these things are the things that I know make me happy because I filled this analysis in. Then the book has suggested that this career will make me happy because it does the things that I like doing as a skill set. So if you understand yourself in terms of what motivates you, analyse yourself as an employer would do, and then go and find the job that's going to make you happy, rather than what most people do is they apply for a job and then they find out after a year they don't like it. So I think there's a lot of self-awareness techniques out there now that employers use that you can use on yourself to then give you a rough idea of what sort of career you might want to do, and just apply some science to it. And if you do that, you then know what you're looking for, and it's not a needle in a haystack, and you'll go and find a job that's roughly, might not be the ideal job, but it's roughly in the right ballpark. And then the next job is a bit nearer to the ideal, and then the next job is a bit nearer still. And if you're happy in your job, you're probably going to be happy in yourself.
Wow, you spend so much time at work, don't you?
Yeah, sort of almost half your waking hours, and more than half your waking hours if you run your own business.
Yeah, very, very true. Very true. So you might as well love it. So Rob, you've given us so many valuable nuggets. I mean, I've been just listening and learning so much through our questions. But through all of that, what would you attribute your success to? I mean, I know it's probably many things, but if you can think of maybe one key element that has kind of shaped your success, what has that been?
I think recruiting good people. So if you're an owner driver and it's a one person business, then fine. You're just accountable to yourself. But if you want to build a business just bigger than one person, you need, and you want to be the leader of that team, then you need to recruit people, don't you? So and I've made a few mistakes, but if you get more correct decisions and incorrect decisions then in recruiting team members, then I think that's really important. If you grow from 1 person to 5 to 10 to 50 or more, then you can't do everything yourself. So you have to work through people. And the very, very good employers, they spend a lot of time and money and effort on recruiting decent people. So I think if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for you. So just be very rigorous about the people you recruit. And if you make a mistake, recognise it and just sort straight away. Because if you recruit 3 people and it's a 4-person business, if you've got one bad apple, that can bring down the whole show. If you've got 100 people in the business and you recruit one bad apple, that's not so bad. But when you're growing a small business to be a bigger business, recruit the best people you can afford. And if you do make a mistake, sort it quickly, because that can that can sink the ship.
Wow, it's really interesting because even Warren Buffett talks a lot about recruiting people, the type of partners you connect to. And I recall he was advising people to make sure that you get on with the people that you're hiring and not to prioritize skill over character, maybe.
Okay, that's an interesting approach, and who am I to say that's right or wrong if it's Warren Buffett? But I don't necessarily think you need to be friends in business. I think there needs to be mutual respect, and I think people need to know where the business is going. But high quality people want to do well. That's sort of almost inbuilt in them, isn't it? And if you can understand as a leader where they want to go and ask them where they want to go, and you can help them to achieve their own personal objectives, that will mean that your interests are aligned with them and they want to work hard for the business because it's what they want to do for themselves. So If people are misaligned, that's when you get issues. If people are aligned and they know where they're going, then I think you increase your chances massively as a leader of a team.
Amazing. Well, Rob, there'll be a lot of sort of new startup businesses out there and small companies. I find the directors do struggle to take on people. They struggle to kind of let go of the business, which is their baby,
Yep.
And actually take the risk that you've taken so many times over the years, inviting people into their company. So what advice would you give to that person?
Well, it is very difficult, isn't it? If it's your baby, you want to nurture the baby and help the baby grow and be healthy. But at some point, you know, as it goes from baby to toddler, you teach it to walk, and then at some point you have to let it go, don't you? So just using that metaphor, you have to support people to be able to crawl and walk and talk and be self-functioning human beings. At some point you've got to let go, and you've got to delegate to people. And the worst thing you can do is, you know, delegate something, and then if it's not done, you know, bypass the person and do it yourself, because that doesn't move the business forward. You've got to delegate, and then you know, if the person can't do it, you know, train them and make sure they have the skills to do it. But at some point they have to do that themselves, because otherwise the business isn't going to grow. So being an MD is being a mentor. You just help the people in the business grow by understanding what they want to achieve. And if you try and align your interests with theirs, then you increase your chance of success for the whole business.
Wow, so it sounds like you're saying the most successful people have the most amazing teams, probably.
Yes, they recruit good people, and then they're able to motivate them and align interests. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, Rob, so we're going to go a little bit back to your 20s, not too far back. I'm sure it wasn't
that's
too
a long
far.
way.
But thinking back to your 20s, is there any advice that you would give to young Rob?
I think the advice would be think quite carefully about what you want to do in life, what your purpose is, and be more scientific about trying to find what does it for you and what makes you happy. And then once you've identified that, then go and find the career that will satisfy those needs. So I think the voyage of discovery for me was trying to get to know myself, and I left it too late, I think. Now, you know, can you know yourself when you're 25? I don't know. Do you know yourself when you're 62? I don't know. But you tend to know yourself more when you're older than when you're younger. So I would try and know myself better so I could avoid the mistakes that I made, and I would be a bit more reflective earlier on. I suppose the question is, you know, if you're 25, do you realise that at the time? Probably not. So I think, you know, whatever age you do it, I think you just need to reflect and just. Another boss said to me once, Rob, if you get out of bed 5 days in a row and you don't want to go to work, you've got to change your job. So I think that's always a good test. You know, if you get up every morning wanting to go to work, then you're probably in the right job. If you get out of bed 5 days in a row not wanting to go to work, you're probably in the wrong job.
Interesting, very interesting. Well, that know thyself is very philosophical, isn't it? It's quite deep. To know yourself, I mean, do people even understand what that means? What does that mean to you?
Well, it is quite deep, isn't it? And I'm sure lots of books have been written on it. But just have an awareness of what your strengths and weaknesses are.
Okay.
So, you know, I hate being stuck at a desk. I hate writing long reports. I'd rather be out meeting people and understanding about business. So I couldn't be a consultant that went out to a business and then had to write, you know, a 60-page report on a business. You know, I just couldn't do that. So I think recognising what you enjoy and what you're good at is quite important. And I think human nature also tends to, we all want to minimise our weaknesses, don't we? And, you know, I'm not very good at that, or I'm not very good at that. And so we spend a lot of time trying to correct things we're not very good at. Another way to think about that is, well, you're never going to be very good at that. So rather than apply loads of time to trying to minimize weaknesses, why don't you just apply the same time to burnishing your strengths and polishing it and making your strengths a bit better? And I think I spent a lot of time trying to minimize weaknesses, wasn't very successful, whereas what I should have done is spent more time building up my strengths. And I think that's probably something I do differently.
Wow, so amazing. I'm going to be the most successful person in the world now after this interview. This is all
I
the
certainly get a
secrets.
bigger sample than just me, but yes, I mean, that's the benefit of having mentors, isn't it?
Yes, amazing.